All right, everyone. So welcome to another episode of the Omar Pinto Coaching Podcast. And today we have my good buddy Chase Tolleson joining us on the podcast. And we are going to be riffing today about a beautiful topic that when I was on the mastermind call the other day with Chase and the other fellas, where Chase had said, "When I serve, I sell." Was that the exact quote, or am I misquoting?
That's exact, brother. Yeah, that's exact. And that came out of someone said on a call I was on, if you don't sell, you don't serve. And somebody turned that affirmative and said, when I sell, I serve. And I flipped it and said, when I serve, I sell. Because that, to me, that's what creates authenticity, whether it's on the front end of a relationship or the back end of a relationship and someone who's already a client. If you're serving your existing clients out of a true place of service, they're going to refer people to you. Ask me how I know. If you're serving people before you ever have a standing relationship with them, you have a much better chance of having a fulfilling relationship serving them as a client.
I've got so many examples of what you're speaking about there. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with Chase, is because I remember what it took for me to get to where I'm at, and it's usually those moments where, I feel humbled. Okay. Or I either feel humbled or I get humbled. Okay. Is all right. And it's usually in my times of struggle. Okay. Where I have two choices. I can either, slide into fear, worry, and self-pity, which sometimes does happen. I'll be honest. Okay. Yeah. It will catch me off guard so quickly. Right. The negative, I forget how powerful negative self-talk and negative thinking can be. It can literally, it's like a vortex. It'll like suck you in. Right. I can feel myself like, like in a rip curl, okay, getting sucked in by the current, right? And it was funny because when I was on the call the other day, I showed up on the mastermind call because I needed it. I was struggling. I felt like I got sucked into the rip curl, and I heard that and I said, "No, this is what we're doing. I'm getting Chase on the call. We are going to riff about being of service. When I serve, I sell." So give me a few stories of how that's played out in your life.
So the most recent one, when I typed that into the chat box on the Zoom call I was on, and it was a workshop for a group of coaches, I typed that in, and within 2 hours I had 2 referrals from one of my clients. And they were referrals in the sense that she owns a med spa and she was paying for a couple of her employees to go through sessions with me. So when I serve, I sell. Like I literally cast that spell and pulled it back out. Another one, I had one of my clients continues to refer people to me, and it's been over a year since we stopped working together. And also a couple of the people he's sent are just because they said, "Hey, what'd you do? You're a whole new man. Mm-hmm. What did you do?" And that's powerful. When somebody has such a shift that their friends are asking them, "Hey, what'd you do?" That's selling by serving to me.
Absolutely. No question about it. So it reminded me of so many things. When there was, I go back 19 years, when I was struggling with drugs and alcohol, and I had literally lost everything. And the last house on the block for me was Narcotics Anonymous. Okay. So right as I was losing my marriage and my business and you could say on death's doorstep, because it was really, really bad. I showed up at one of these meetings and these guys just said, just keep coming back, man. And I came in, I said, "Listen, my name's Omar. I'm an addict. I need help." And they said, "You're in the right place, man." Right. So here's a group of guys that I don't know from Adam. okay, that are business owners or, whatever it is that they're doing, whatever they've got going on, but they take time out every single day to show up at noon at this meeting to serve.
Yeah.
And so about a year of me showing up to these meetings and me starting to work this program, and these guys helping me by being of service, just by showing up and having a guy sponsor me, I was inspired to start serving as well. So I spent over a decade of my life from that moment on in service of other men. So I was a sponsor for probably, I would say close to 15 years.
Wow.
Okay. But a solid decade. I mean, like when I was in it, I would say a solid decade of me having a few sponsees, and we'd meet every week. So we're talking about a decade where I'm coaching. I call it now, they call it sponsorship, but I realized I was coaching these men for over a decade, which helped me compile this body of knowledge and information. Right.
Yeah.
And so when I professionally went out into becoming a coach, I recognized all the benefits that came from being of service, right? Recognizing my own value, recognizing my gifts and talents, right? And so because I was already used to being of service, right? Even in the beginning stages of me coaching, me getting myself out there, right? A lot of for me, it wasn't Facebook ads or Google ad space or whatever. I'm probably not even using the right terms, right? Because I've never used them, right? Is like I would just start reaching out to my friends and coaching them for free, kind of like I did, sponsoring guys for free. I was like, I'm used to this. This actually feels good. It's easy, right?
Yeah.
And so until I can transition into the sales aspect. So I'm curious as to stories that you might have that are similar, in that aspect where, the intention was not even to sell. It wasn't to make money. It was like when I spent all those years sponsoring other guys, it never dawned on me that I could do this full time.
Yeah. And to be fair, that still happens for me. I had one of my clients who signed up today, actually. We were going back and forth in Instagram messages, and I had zero intent of ever hopping on a call with this guy. I was like, he was 4-stepping his own stories using the Enlifted method. I'm like, cool. Like, you got it. Like, here's another tool you can use. Next thing I know, he wants to get on a call. That's a very recent one. Going back to when I was running the gym, there were multiple instances of just talking with people about fitness. And next thing you know, I see their name come through on scheduling a free intro for my gym, just because I had a conversation around, hey, like, you might want to, they ask, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's try this for movement and do this and do that. Like, okay, cool. Hey, have a good day. Like, and next thing I know, within the next week, I would see their name come through, scheduling an intro with me. And part of this, part of what came up for me when you were talking is being of service for me, anyway, for me personally, has allowed me to accept service and graciousness from others easier as well. So many people and so many coaches, especially people who are in service of others. I know for myself, and I'd imagine there's a lot of coaches out there that don't see themselves worthy of, a referral that they didn't work for, or a client just being handed to them, or, somebody's package being paid for by somebody else, or whatever it is. Like, well, I didn't go out and get this. Am I worth it? Is this really what it is? So for me, it's been very much so a two-way street.
It's sounds very humbling.
Yes.
Okay? It's very humbling. And one thing about coaching is that the work never stops, the growing never stops, the learning never stops. And even as I'm listening to you talk about receiving coaching, hey, that's still a struggle for me, taking direction. I just started working with Dave and Brooks in Chop Club.
Yeah.
And, it happened because I was interviewing Brooks, and Brooks is just this gifted storyteller. He tells these stories that basically I just got on the interview with him, introduced him, and then I just kind of sat back in the interview and just watched him, entertain me. And I go, wow, this is going to be so entertaining, for all my listeners, and by the time he was done, I'm like, dude, just sign me up to Chop Club, man. I need to get in there, man. Like, and it was a podcast interview. Like afterwards, he says, hey, I didn't realize I could actually sell by telling a story. Okay. I just told my story and it was so impactful. But what I find too, is that a lot of my coaching is through storytelling. A lot of, when people are struggling with marital issues or drug addiction or divorce or any number of things that they struggle with, these are all things that I have overcome. And they come with these beautiful stories, these beautiful examples, right? And people love stories.
Yeah. Well, they love a coach who's relatable, and I'd imagine they like to know that they're not alone in going through this struggle. Somebody else has gone through it and came out the other side, so they can do it too.
It's a beautiful way to coach and teach, is through relatability.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of less, there's more heavy lifting in when you're coaching than when you're telling a story that they can relate to, and they draw their own aha moments or their own conclusions from it. And they're like, oh my God, this kind of reminds me of this or that or whatever. And then I can just kind of pivot off of that. And now I have this new body of information that might not have surfaced. I can't remember. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, wow, I can't believe you've never told me this before. He goes, I hadn't really thought about it until you told your story. Right.
Yes. The amount of times the amount of stuff that people have going on underneath the surface that they haven't thought about as something that holds them back. I had a client who we got through 5 calls, and on our 6th, we were working his wins. And as we're working the wins, it comes up like, oh, I haven't talked to my brother in 5 years. And I'm like, oh, and then we worked that piece of stuck that it didn't come up in like 5 calls of like working stuck. And then that piece was the most impactful thing, and so to your point, like, oh, I didn't even know that was in there. Yeah. Because we're taught to just shove this stuff down and move forward and just don't pay attention to it. It'll be fine. No.
Well, some things are they're buried so deeply.
Yeah.
And, a situation like that is mired in shame.
Yeah.
Okay. Bringing up, when you even probably verbalizing that probably brought a tremendous amount potentially of shame. Okay. Because if I haven't brought this up in 5 sessions, then it's buried so deep that I've blocked it out. And the reason why I've blocked it out is because it's painful and shameful. And the thought of not reconnecting, I haven't spoken to my sister I have 2 sisters, one that was just here in Costa Rica visiting me. She's a year younger than me, and we've, thick as thieves, basically our entire lives. And then I have another sister that I haven't spoke to in 12 years, so, and it's interesting because, for the most part, it doesn't come up, and it's not a point of contention, right, for me. And when it does come up is when somebody's struggling with that, when they've had to create a very hard boundary with a family member because of their level of toxicity. And there's so much guilt and shame wrapped in them holding that boundary, right? So even that makes it, more relatable, where it's like, whoa, man, but I see you on social media, you're always so happy and with your family and this and that. I go, that's all true. That is all 100% true. It doesn't mean that I have to include everyone into my world and into my circle simply because they're related to me, because they're blood.
Right.
There's
a whole nother level there, blood family or soul family, and
big time.
Yeah. And there are people who are, who are blood family that may end up not part of the soul family, negation acknowledged. And there are people who become soul family that you never even saw coming.
Oh, I have quite a few of those that are family, and that, when the chips are down, man, I know exactly who I can call, and the list gets bigger as the years go by, but you have to make sometimes the most difficult decisions of your life to remove the toxic people from my. I spent 5 days with my mother. Okay. And I was just telling, because one of my clients was like, hey, so, how are you? How was your weekend? I saw, and I was like,
Mhm.
if I'll be honest with you, if you want me to be honest with you. Right.
Yep.
I go, for the most part, I feel like Superman. And I'll tell you why I'm using the Superman
Yeah.
analogy. Most of the times when I show up on my calls, when I show up with my clients, when I show up for my family, right? I feel like Superman, right? When I show up, people are like, Omar's here. Like, yes, Omar's here, right? When I'm around my mother, she is literally my kryptonite. Okay. Like, I've said this, I've done 18 ayahuasca ceremonies, countless psilocybin journeys. Okay. Personal development, coaching. Okay. I spent over 15 years in 12-step recovery. And that small little 5'1" tiny little person can literally, I feel myself crumpling into an old man. Okay. It is powerful energy that I've come to the conclusion, or at least it's not even conclusion. It's like full embrace, full acceptance that, I love my mom. Okay. I certainly do not have it's not the same as with my sister. Right. But I recognize that there are certain people in your life that, even if you love them and even if you come from them, like your mother, when you are around them, they can literally, it's like a cell phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I come in full battery charge, and it's like within seconds, it's just
Mm-hmm.
by the time the 5 days was over, battery was like, the phone was off. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and the question, what comes up for me is, where does that come from? Like, is their energy so drained that they feel that they're constantly siphoning off of others because they never learned, or they have something inside siphoning their own battery, and they don't even realize it? Got him.
Great. Yeah. I was like, ooh, because it is true, man. It is. I am an energy source.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what it tells me is, Mom doesn't have an energy source. So she needs to plug into others for her source of energy.
She squelched her flame. So many people, if I may run down this rabbit hole for a second.
Let's go.
So we all have a fire, right? An internal flame. And what happens often, and I've seen, especially with men and sometimes powerful women, often powerful women, is this fire burns bright, and it either burns them or someone else close to them. And either that fire burns out of control or they squelch it. Either way, if it burns out of control, it's eating up everything there is to burn, and they need more. If they squelch it, they don't have their own flame. So they squelch their flame and they don't have their own power. And then that's like the middle of the road. That's where most people end up. True mastery is where you can relight that fire, take it, put it on sticks, and start juggling it and walk around with it and own your fire and use it when you need it and let it burn softly when appropriate.
Wow. Oh man, I got a beautiful imagery of that. But it's certainly, it feels very accurate. Feels very accurate, and then if you want to go into, giving and receiving, right? That's another, I am inherently a giver.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to learn how to receive, right? I wasn't taught to receive. I was taught to give, so being of service is always kind of like, when if you look at the victim triangle or the drama triangle, you'll find me primarily in either the victim role or the rescuer role. One of those two. Okay. It's always been, growing up, I certainly wasn't in the persecutor role or the aggressor role. I was either the victim or the rescuer, one of the two. And that's kind of like what I was predisposed to be. So receiving wasn't really part of the equation. It was more like my validation and my sense of value came from, there we go, being of service.
Yeah.
Okay. So which is, I'm very grateful for that too, because it was kind of like the, when I tell this to clients too, that I work with that are in the rescuer role, I'm like, listen, of the three, if you're in that drama triangle, okay, victim, rescuer, persecutor, okay, then if you're the rescuer, you're actually in the best position of those three, because the victim is hopeless, blames everyone, doesn't take responsibility, and is constantly siphoning off of others. Okay. Either has someone to blame or, needs someone to constantly rescue them, and the persecutor cannot be talked to, cannot be coached, cannot be manipulated, they're just the persecutor. Okay. Yeah. So you can't penetrate. Meanwhile, the rescuer, he's got to hustle, or she's got to hustle. They're the fixer. They're the one that has to, fix everything, keep the peace, keep everyone together, run to the rescue. So they're usually type A personality, overachievers, that kind of a thing. So I guess, if you're going to get sucked into one of those roles, which eventually when I pulled myself out of the rescuer role is where I ended up in the coaching role.
Yeah. And to your point, there are a lot of coaches who are still operating in the rescuer space.
Oh, for sure.
Like, and I've dropped this victim rescuer paradox on a lot. And like, you can recognize the victim easily. It's harder especially to be in the rescuer, to recognize it for a lot of people, because they think that they're out there helping the victims and helping people come out of it. Then their self-worth goes in the dumpster if they don't have someone to help fix.
100% true. And not only that, what's dangerous for coaches, and I have, my first years as a coach, right? Because I was working in the addiction recovery space for so long. Oh my God, we're all victims. Oh, you don't understand, but it was different for me. And I can't believe she left me. And how could she do that to me? Or how could he do that to me? And it was lots of victim mentality, okay, in that space.
Yeah.
So you find yourself when you're not trained, because I was just, being a sponsor, there's no actual training in there, is, I'm predisposed to try and help and rescue them. Right. Okay. What can I do? Right. And so one of the challenges was, when I became a coach, was to be able to coach people, ask them the right questions, hold them accountable to their statements, to their language, to their words, to their belief systems. Okay. And help them through asking them empowering questions and giving them action items, right?
Yeah.
Versus in some cases where I felt like I need to rescue this person, right? Yeah. I felt like, oh my God, she's in trouble, especially if it was a woman.
Yeah.
Right? I would be like, oh my God, what can I do? What can I say? How can I, and so in many cases, I remember at some point I'd have to go to my own coach, right? And go, okay, so here's what happened. And they're like, oh, whoa, easy now.
Yep.
Okay, you're getting sucked into your own, you're falling back into the drama triangle. Okay, pull yourself out. Okay, and there's no rescuing here, and there's no victims. There's active, willing participants. Hold them accountable to their part. Okay, and so this is again, since the topic is part of it is the service aspect of it. You know, when
Yep.
I serve, I
Yeah.
sell, right? I'm not serving anyone by saving them.
No. And that's, you said in there when you're talking you were talking about the right questions. And to me, rescuers would tend to get stuck in all the right answers.
Mm.
And when you're actually serving, you have the right questions.
Beautiful. So, you know, just so that the listeners get a little, you know, get to know Chase a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became a coach. You know,
That's a fun one. I was into fitness since I was a kid because my dad had a weight bench in his bedroom when I was 4 years old. So I was the skinny kid that wanted to add muscle, right? I got in the Navy and I realized I had it better than most when somebody said, wow, that 2-car garage on your house is the size of my house. And I was in the Navy with a chip on my shoulder because they changed the rules on whether or not I could go after a Navy SEAL contract 5 days before I went to contract in. So I worked in engine rooms with a chip on my shoulder for 4 years. I got out, I opened a CrossFit gym, and I thought I was going to be changing lives. And I did. Like, I was helping people get fit, and there's always something more. Like, I wanted to fix their heart and their mind and their soul. And that's when I started diving into more with clients that were open to it. And I opened that gym in 2014. It's 2022 now, and I shut the gym down last December. Shut the gym down so I could go online and have more impact. I've been online for about 2 years now, and it's been awesome because what I'm doing is taking all the fitness and helping guys up level their lifestyle and their fitness, and also using the tools that I've acquired between working my own story around, if I didn't get a contract, nothing ever really happens the way I want it. Between working that, the Enlifted method, and all the other pieces that I've been through to help guys become finely tuned to carry their own journey. My whole thing is I want to work myself out of a job. You work with me for 12. I've had guys, one of my clients texted me last month. We worked together for 12 weeks. It's like, hey, I realize it's been about a year since we first connected. 37 was the best year of my life, more fulfilled than ever. And I have a better relationship with my body and fitness than I ever did before. So recap, skinny kid who wanted to build muscle, realized that there's more to it than fitness. Took a deep dive inside my own head and decided that I have the tools to help men up level their own lives.
And question, you said 12 weeks?
Yep. Yeah. So most guys work with me for 12 weeks.
So your objective is to get them fully, you want them fully independent?
Yeah. As many as possible. In the fitness and lifestyle side of things, there are guys that continue with me after 12 weeks on a more high level, like full life optimization. I fully understand that some guys will get through and be like, wow, I have control of my fitness and I have better self-esteem. I can take this and run with it. Cool. I'm happy. And there's a small handful of guys that stick around afterward, and we go into like ancestral stories and clear out stuff from generational trauma. And then we up level other pieces of their life because they're now cleared of that. So initially it's 12 weeks. Yeah.
So, which is great because it's really the way that when I set up my practice to be that same way, it's 8 to 12 weeks basically, but we start with an 8-week package. Okay. A lot of times it's a very specific, issue, right? Which if it's one very specific issue, then within, 8 sessions, we should be able to get a handle on it, right? I've had in many situations, we've gotten to like number 7 and they already got what they needed, like the 8 with just to kind of like, bring it all in. Right. And then on occasions, like we're on the cusp. I feel like we're right there. Probably need about 4 more sessions. Right. And then that usually turns it over. And I have like you said, a handful that like, no, I want to keep working with you. Because there's something very beneficial about that accountability. Right. And not so much holding you accountable for specific items, but knowing that there's a coaching session coming, you just hold yourself to a different standard when you know you're going to be meeting with your coach. You start kind of doing an inventory of like, okay, so I'm going to be meeting with this week. So, what are we going to talk about? What's he going to ask me? And a lot of times they've shown up and goes, this is interesting. And I was like thinking about our call today. I was like, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to dive into? Right. And that's when I know we're getting close to the end.
Yeah. When they have to reach for it.
When they have to reach for it, I'm like, okay, we're good. We're good. Yep. Right. And so a lot, what I'll usually do is like, I tell them, look, we can do tune-ups later. You can hit me up in a month from now. We can do one-offs from this moment on. Right. But ideally the objective is to get them, to launch. Right.
Yeah.
What I am curious now is about diving into the ancestral part, right? And their trauma. So tell me a little bit about how that looks.
Yeah. So this is something that we'll do after we've cleared the stock, after we've celebrated personal wins. And then we come back around and we look at mom's stories, mom's life, dad's life, family secrets, family traumas. And we go through, and I believe you've experienced the 4-step process. We 4-step it. And it requires some research for some people because some people's parents are less than open. So it often requires like getting in touch with a parent or an aunt or this or that and getting stories. And I went back to grandfather's stories. I had one client who his grandfather was shot by his brother. So his dad's dad was shot by his dad's uncle in the town square.
Wow.
And like, there are some people out there that believe that traumas like that are stored in the DNA and passed down. So when we go in and we rep those stories, we can clear them out. When I was going through this course where I learned this, my peer-to-peer call, I worked a story about my dad and forgiving somebody who had harmed his uncle. And when I got done repping the affirmation and casting the spell, if you will, with that one, I got physical sensation in my heart that I was not expecting. Like something ran into it and jumped into it. So that there's bordering on the edge of that mystical kind of stuff when we start repping the ancestral things.
So would you mind sharing that story about your dad?
Of course. I am an open book. My father grew up with parents that his parents divorced. His mother drank a lot. So his uncle, his mother's brother, was like the strong, like a big brother to him, like a role model, his best friend. His uncle was seeing this woman whose ex-husband was a Chicago cop. This cop got jealous and had my dad's uncle in his car one night and shot him in the chest. He says that, and he gave the story that, well, he lunged at me or something like that. He got off with like less than 2 years for, manslaughter or something like that. And that was a thing. So the affirmation that I rep that my fellow coach wrote out for me that I didn't even say is along the lines of, I forgive the cop who killed my dad's uncle so that my dad can heal. And it was, I forget it verbatim, and that was along the lines of what we came up with out of there. And just passing that forgiveness and that healing back up the chain is powerful.
And what did your dad need to heal from?
Having a best friend, a male role model ripped from his life when he was already the one that was raising himself and his brother and his sister.
His uncle was raising him.
No, my dad was basically raising them, and his uncle was the one that he looked up to, and the one stable figure in his life.
And it was taken from him.
Yes.
So how did he heal because of his death?
He didn't heal because of his death. He was torn up. The affirmation that I cast, put it out there for some healing to start. And the interesting piece, my dad had never really talked about that to me. I got it from my mom. The week after I cast that affirmation, all of a sudden my dad and I have a heart to heart, and he shares that story with me, and he got to air it out.
There it is. There
Yeah.
it is.
So
there it is.
Yeah. And he didn't know I had worked that story. So it got put out there, and whatever magic you want to believe in, something dropped it into his head that it was time to air that out.
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra, brother. Yes, sir.
So while we're on the call, we can talk about one of the things that I've learned in starting to do the uplifted method is the definition for abracadabra.
Yeah.
Which is, go ahead.
Comes from the ancient Aramaic for "with my word I create," or "with my word I influence." And our language shapes our perception of our reality. And if you want to jump into quantum physics, our language might even shape our reality, because everything is vibration. Yeah.
No, I'm always jumping into quantum physics as much as possible. And you know, I remember when I was, I've always had a tough time reading books. So for me, studying in school, whenever there was a book report, I would just rent a movie. So whatever book, you know, had a movie out, I would go watch the movie, and then I would do my book report on the movie. Okay. I would sit down to read whatever it was, and literally I would read the page, realize I didn't grasp any of the information, number one. Yep. Or number two, 3 pages in, I'd be asleep on the book. Okay. So I had to do a workaround. I had to figure out how to absorb literature without actually reading. But when I moved to Costa Rica and I was starting to, I was starting to lose myself. I was running an online casino and sports book here. It was starting to be successful. It was starting to make money. I was doing a lot of drugs. And so, you know, the ego just took over.
Yeah.
I became, you know, I morphed into something horrible and a monster, really. And before I really went full blown monster, I had 2 different people gift me a book called The Alchemist.
Oh, dude, it's on the shelf back there.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. There's very few entrepreneurs. Okay. Yeah. There's very few people in personal development that have not heard of Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. Yeah. And again, when you want to talk about quantum physics and creating your reality, and also a power greater than you actually running the operating system, I found myself in one of the worst times in my life reading a book. Okay. And I remember getting a few pages into it, and I was locked in, man. I was absolutely locked in. Okay. And so that a lot of that mysticism, a lot of what was, you know, a lot of, I can benchmark a lot of my conversations about the mystics and about alchemy and about, you know, creating with your words from that book. Because I must have read it a good 5 times. I remember my sister years down the road, once I got sober, and I don't know how the conversation comes in. And I go, yeah, you know, I'm reading The Alchemist again. She goes, again? How many times have you read that book? How many times can you read that book? And I'm like, you can read The Alchemist 10 times and you're going to get something different and something very special out of every one of those, every time you read it. Right.
100%.
And so this is where my introduction to, quantum physics, creating your own reality, finding yourself comes from that book. So I'm right there with you, my friend.
That's beautiful. Talking about books. I recently started down the series, the Law of One series, the raw material. And there's 5 books. It's a group that did channeling work back in the 80s. And these are the tape recordings and the transcripts of it. So you want to jump into something that talks about vibration and alignment and all of that. It's got me hooked.
I love it. The Law of One. I have heard of this.
Yeah, I'd imagine with the circles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's, I'm like, okay. And usually it's like, oh, there it is. There's the next one. And then another book that when I read it, it reminded me of my journey, with addiction, was Siddhartha.
Okay.
By Hermann Hesse. Okay, so Siddhartha is the journey of Buddha. Okay, so like it's really the hero's journey.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what the book is. The book is the hero's journey, right? And for many of us that are sitting on this end of the table, you realize that everything happened for a reason. There's absolutely nothing that happened to me in my life or is currently happening in my life that didn't happen for me.
You want to know what a kick my mom got out of getting to say "I told you so" on that? Because I used to, when I didn't get my Navy SEAL contract, because I sold my Camaro that I said I'd never sell to pay for LASIK. And yeah, 88 IROC Z, new engine, new transmission, fancy paint job. It was my T-top and leather jacket car.
Oh,
and yeah. And my mom's cousin, who worked at the Pentagon, when he found out I wanted to be a SEAL, sent a book to me. He's like, hey, no, this is the real deal. This is what you could end up going through. Don't do this. That book was Lone Survivor, the Marcus Luttrell story.
Great story.
Great story. I read it in 72 hours and put my car up for sale to pay for LASIK. His plan backfired. I get LASIK. I'm talking with the Navy for over a year. It's on paper. I'm talking with them for a year. And I go up to contract day in January 26, 2010. And they say, sorry, new instruction was sent out January 21st. Your misdemeanor possession charge is no longer waiverable. And at this point, it had been almost 2 years of talking with different branches. I said, I went back and forth for like a week. My second cousin tried pulling some strings, had handed my package to an admiral, the deputy chief of naval personnel. It's like, sorry, don't believe his story. Can't help him. Story was one the recruiters told me to write to push it through faster. So I have a chip on my shoulder, right? I go into the Navy. I'm bitter. And then to make it all even better, and you think about how much sense this makes with the chip I had on my shoulder, I fell off a rock wall and had a grade 3 sprain on my right ankle. Like it just folded in half. And I'm sitting there in my barracks room one Friday night, feeling sorry for myself, drinking a fifth of Jack, and got a boot on my ankle. And I'm like, maybe when I get back from deployment, I won't buy a new Camaro. Maybe I'll buy another 80s Camaro. So I get on this Camaro website I used to frequent, go to the for sale ads. First one at the top, 88 IROC Z, new engine, fresh paint. Well, that sounds like my kind of car. It was yours. My car. It was my car. Yep. Got on the phone with my dad. We both reminisced about our first Camaros. He calls me back on Monday and goes, hey, you owe me $4,800. Your car's in my garage.
Oh,
yeah. Yep.
Oh, man.
So that's when my mom got to go, told you so. Everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yep.
And, there was, like even right now, what's going on in my life currently, right? Mm-hmm. I've just recently had, like, I don't know, I haven't even done the numbers. That's how much it's like blowing my mind. I took such a shift in over the last month.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've lost 25% of my clients. Okay. And, from being in the enlifted method, or using the enlifted method, right? I was like, wait a minute. That is a very disempowering word, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why are you using that word? Why are you saying you lost 25% of your clients, right? And it's all perspective, right? Because usually when I'm busy, when things are like pumping and a client graduates, I say my clients graduated, right? But because the pipeline kind of seized up, okay, that's like, oh my God, I lost 25% of my business, right? I was like, God, it feels so heavy. Feels so heavy, right? And then as soon as I reframed it, I go, 25% of my clients have graduated. That's positive. But I realized that this method is having such an impact on me that I'm immediately needing to shift. And then, there's another word. I just caught myself. Okay.
Now let's go, brother.
Brooke said this was going to happen.
Yes.
Brooke said this was going to happen. I have been invited to make some positive changes within my own curriculum, right? So the fresh clients that are going to be coming in, right? I now can deploy the enlifted method with them.
I love that. That's so cool, dude. That's such an awesome shift and frame of reference. So that's going back to taking the shift of the language and the serve to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer call them sales calls. I call them enrollment calls.
Oof. Yeah. That's a beautiful shift. Beautiful shift. Yeah. Cause for me, I used to say, and I think I still have it on my website. I'm going to change it, right? For a free consultation.
Yeah.
Right. And I go what I usually write on the emails when I send them to it is a discovery call.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're going to discover whether or not this is the right fit for you and I. And that's something that's very important for me, is also the idea that it is okay for me to choose my clients.
100%. When I was in the gym industry, one of the things that went around was when you're signing someone up, whether you can take on 20 more clients or 10 more clients before your space fills, would this be the person that you sign up if you could only take one more person inside your walls?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say no and you still sign them up, you're doing everybody a disservice.
100% true. So as we're closing up here, Chase, tell us a little bit about how my listeners can reach out to you and connect with you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Instagram is where I am the most active right now, at Coach_Chase_Tolleson. TikTok is up and coming, and that one's the brand of the course. So primal.man.pathway. And other than that, ChaseTolleson.com has more of the details on the 12-week Primal Man Pathway, which we're launching the first cohort right now. We will be enrolling the second cohort soon. And that's I'm taking everything that I've learned from, when I first got personal training certification in 2008 to running a gym for 8 years, and whittled it down to the basics that work and are truly effective for fitness. And that way that's delivered in the course. And then the one-on-one calls, I get to affect the true change and help men immensely level up. So
the one-on-one is where all the magic happens.
Yes, sir. That's why the course delivers the things that everybody used to get.
Beautiful. So on the topic of when I serve, I sell, do you have any final thoughts or final words on that topic or on anything else?
I've been here before, and this was a shift that was very valuable for me to make, because a lot of coaches, and I've had these conversations with coaches, like they feel like they're being inauthentic because they're aiming to sell first. And they feel like they're being corny because they're putting this stuff out there to sell. And the ironic thing is, a lot of your content will only change a little bit. And as when you can shift it to honestly providing things that you see as service to your community and that people thank you for, everything will move a lot better.
I love it. I love it. It is, I would say the key to my success has been the service work that I have done, in all the years that I was as a sponsor. But also I remember too, that one of the decisions that I made was, whenever the chips are down, right? And it's always been the same, right? Whenever something heavy is happening in your life, whatever that heaviness might be, whatever struggle I may be going through, similar to even right now in this transition period where I finally got the message. Okay. I finally realized why what was happening for me. Okay. The shift was happening so that I could have the time and the space to shift the way I coach. Okay. Which I'm very excited about. But I also remember that in those times, the best thing to do is to get out of my own head. And the only way to do that is to immediately go out and start helping people. Okay. So that was one of the things, like I started, like I started reaching out to some people, right? Like as soon as I started to feel that negativity, I was like, oof, I got to go help some people. Right. And of course, as soon as I started doing that, before I knew it, I've got people, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this, old friends, right? Hey, do you have a minute? And I'm like, just so happens that I've got some time for you, right? And that always makes me feel good. So folks, whenever you are in a place where you just can't get out of your own way, stop trying. Go out, find someone that you can help, find a way that you can be of service, okay? And let that be your guide. That momentum, that energy will typically pull you out, or at least give you guidance and direction of what your next step needs to be.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Chase.
Omar. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I want to send you lots and lots of love, man. Love you very much.
Received, and right back at you, brother. Love you.
All right. Coming out soon.